Hey, Raj, it's good to see you again.
It's great to see you, doctor. It's really, really great to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Raj and I actually met last year at a conference, and he brought kind of a whole new aspect a little bit to my life and my awareness of taking care of patients. And I really wanted to get a chance to for us to sort of talk together to get an understanding of how to bridge your world, which is more the psychological world, the science behind the brain and trauma and how that affects us, and my world, which is all more based on physical health, and
Yeah.
how we probably need to bridge that a whole lot more than what most of us as practicing physicians are doing. So we get these patients who have disease states, or just a lot of patients are super healthy, but they want to be super healthy till they're 120. And what impediments there might be that are not being recognized by all the lab tests in the world that I'm doing. I mean, I do buku lab tests and brain MRI scan and WAVI scans on the brain and coronary CT scans and all these pieces to put together to help you live forever. And am I missing a piece? So when I listen to you talk, it sort of brought to my awareness that we may well be missing a whole piece of optimizing health that we need to address. And how can we bridge these worlds together a little bit more? So maybe you
Yeah.
can just tell me a little bit about your experience in that realm, and exactly what your company's been doing with that.
Yeah, I'll just speak just to name my company's Liber8, and what we do is we bring data, science, and deep rigor to the emotional aspect of health. And like when we think about emotions, we don't really actually give them a lot of weight in medical communities. But what we've found over and over and over again is that stress, the idea of stress is linked to almost every single mental, emotional, and physical disease that exists. Now, the source of stress might be different. There could be inflammation. There's all types of stress that the body accumulates. But when we think about what is the root cause of stress, that's where now things start to get really interesting. Because if you're having a stressful experience, if you're having any level of nervous system dysregulation, that's what it is. The nervous system is out of a state of rest and digest. It is in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And all of those survival patterns, the ways that we move through life, whether it's overworking, whether it's having limiting beliefs, whether it's having a relationship to ourselves that's not healthy, whatever the behavioral pattern is on the surface, if we have a nervous system that has a behavioral pattern like that, and we're just running, 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 we're going to drive our bodies into the ground. And we're going to drive our bodies into pain. We're going to drive our bodies into sickness. And so when I think of like emotion, it may sound woo, but at the high level, our emotions are driving our behaviors, our thoughts, our beliefs. And if we don't actually address the emotions and the accompanying beliefs that are attached to those emotions, which all stem from experiences we have in our lives, whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's the way we were raised, whether it's the things we experience, the hardships we experience, it doesn't matter. For some reason, we're carrying around a set of beliefs, emotions, and a way of moving through the world. And when we zoom out and look at our choices, like our choices ultimately impact our health. So whether, you had an emotional trauma that then created a set of beliefs that are contributing to stress today, or you have a really hard time sticking to a diet because the diet, the food you eat reminds you of something you experienced in childhood, and now it's your comfort food. Like, to say that the emotions aren't actually linked to whether the behaviors or the health itself, like I feel like now is very limiting. And so when I think about it from a longevity standpoint, like the healthiest thing, the greatest biohack I feel is actually getting into a greater relationship with our emotional health and really learning how to access deep nervous system regulation. And when we have a regulated nervous system, everything is possible.
But I guess where your theory differs a little bit, because I don't think anybody is not aware of or denies the connection between stress and disease. We all know that, when we're under a lot of stress, when we have high pressure jobs, when we're not taking time to be in nature, to be social, to be doing things that make us feel good, that links to disease. And I think that's hugely aware. And the way we've tried to teach patients to deal with it is, okay, well, let's work on meditation. Let's work on all these techniques. Let's just, or let's try using vagus nerve stimulators to sort of settle down that sympathetic nervous system drive and work on parasympathetic drive. So we have our patients doing 4 times a day sympathetic nervous system, and we have them learning meditation techniques and using meditation apps to utilize that, and using sleep techniques. And when I listened to you, one of my pieces was, okay, so we're dealing with this maybe on too superficial of a level. Do we have to go back and look at a deeper things like our childhood experiences to actually get to where we want people to do? Or can I just deal with stress the way I'm trying to deal with it now? Okay, telling all my patients, okay, let's do this and this and this and these steps, without getting into this deeper level that you guys do at Liber8.
That's the ultimate question, right? Like, because it depends on how much liberation you want. How free do you want to be? How much energy do you want to have? Right? Like, it's like, what's the upside? Like, if you just want to get to a state of baseline where you're like, so this is where I like to think about it. Like, the meditations, the breath works, the tools that you might use to navigate a symptom of dysregulation are great. Every time you get dysregulated, you can go and do the tool, and you can make that a lifestyle of just constantly doing the tools. What we are looking at is a root cause approach. Why did
So
the
that
nervous
fits with
system?
all my practitioners, right? Because that's what we do, right? We don't just try and treat a symptom. We are trying to find, why do you have that symptom? So that's what you're saying, is that, okay, these stress responses that we do all the time that are leading to our high cortisol, that are leading to disease, that, okay, I can treat the cortisol, I can treat the high stress. It's going to keep happening to me unless I find the root cause of why this behavior, this trigger sets me off.
That's exactly right. And so our entire approach is, let's run an emotional lab report and just get to the root of why you are in dysregulation. Why are you getting triggered by these things over and over and over again? Why do these types of people piss you off over and over and over again? Why do you keep repeating these people pleasing patterns or these negative insecurities? Like, or where do these like stressed out behaviors of overworking or these patterns that keep you sick, where do the patterns come from? Because if we don't understand where they come from, we can't develop a personalized plan to address the problem. You're just going to keep throwing money at the problem. You're going to keep throwing darts at the board without really knowing what you're trying to hit. And so it's ultimately important to understand. I'm not saying you need to go back in time and find every single thing that happened to you or every single thing that happened to your family or revisit every hard thing that came in your life. That's not necessarily what I'm suggesting either. But what I am saying is, I think it's important to ask ourselves the questions. Why is my nervous system dysregulated? Why is it responding to stress in this way? What are the events that shaped it? Because when we have awareness of the events that shaped the reason why our nervous system responds to threat the way that it does, we can begin to do something about it. We can begin to shift the programming, the neurological pathways that are consistently responding to threats, and show them a new way with specific tools like meditation, with specific tools like hypnosis, with specific tools like breath work, with specific skill sets like parts therapy and different types of modalities. But ultimately, we got to know what we're working with. Because if we don't know what we're working with, we
Yeah.
can't actually shape a nervous system that is resilient and in service of great health.
Yeah, I think that really hits home with, all my patients who are listening to this, is that, never would I look at your abnormal lab result, and just say, oh, let's just treat this lab result. We're going to try and figure out, why do you have this abnormal lab result? And yet we don't, as doctors, I don't think we do that on a psychological basis. We don't go back and say, could even some of this abnormal lab work be based on some psychological things that are going on? Great study that was done just through the, pretty recently, actually, looking at just biomarkers of interleukin 6, TNF alpha, C-reactive protein, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It was actually just published about 3 months ago, I think, in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. So really recently, and they looked at from it was the University of Cambridge, so they probably used the British Biobank data, and they looked at all of these events in our lives that go on, and then they tagged that, and they looked at people. Yeah, it was from the UK Biobank, age 40 to 70. And then they looked at all these different biomarkers, and most of them are the same biomarkers we look at in medicine, right? They're looking at these cytokines that are elevated, and we're looking for disease states that are elevating these cytokines, right? If I see somebody who has a high interleukin 6 and, and a low brain-derived neurotrophic factor or hippocampal atrophy on their brain MRI scans, I look for what disease state's causing that. And what I maybe forgot to look for is, could that disease state be actually ingrained in my cells from a long time ago that I need to undo, right? So,
I mean, and this is the piece that's like, I mean, there's actually a study, I just pulled it up right now, that was done in late October last year. They found an association between pre-treatment emotional distress and neoadjuvant immune checkpoint blockade response in melanoma. I mean, like, this is like stuff that we understand. And so like when we start to think of it from the standpoint, like the emotional patterns, that's what I like to think of, like what we're even speaking to right now is not stress. Stress is a big word.
Right.
What we're speaking to are the patterns that we learned that are contributing to all sorts of stress. And now those patterns can't be unlearned with just a tool. They can't be rewired. Otherwise, you would have already done it.
Yeah.
If you could get rid of the patterns that are contributing to your health challenges, or like, you would have already done it. And so this is where, like, by going back in time, now this is like, our process is very simple, right? We start to track all of the things that are creating emotional distress, everything from emotional triggers to fears and anxieties to worries to the things your spouse might say, whatever it is. We track all this stuff, and then we take you back in time to actually look for, where did this pattern start? What were the early childhood experiences that caused this pattern to literally become the way that you live your life? And you may not have had illness in those moments, but when something is happening over and over and over, it just continues building. It does contribute to the accumulation of stress, the accumulation of bound energy just stored in the body. And if you don't have a healthy relationship to your emotions, in fact, there's so much science now with polyvagal around just safety. And if you didn't feel safe enough to feel an emotion when you were a child, most likely what happened was that emotion got stored in the body. And over time, when you had more and more experiences, it just kept adding to this pile of energy that's just stored in the system. And that now creates the reactiveness. It creates the hypervigilance. It creates the nervous system that's just on edge all the time. And on edge might look different, right? We have a culture of like working hard. And we've worked with a lot of high performers over the years. I'm a high performer, and I had this chronic, like, let's get shit done. Let's run as fast as we can. Let's go. And I didn't realize that was actually a trauma response that was contributing to a lot of my gut issues. I tried healing my gut for years, and I couldn't, because the patterns of me needing to control the outcomes and push my limits and go was actually creating the stress in my gut. And it wasn't until I actually looked at that I healed everything. My eczema went away.
Just interesting.
Yeah, my eczema went away. Like, I mean, there was like, I couldn't eat a steak without taking like HCl, and like, it's like my body just wasn't
right.
enough.
And then that all changed just by going back and sort of changing your immune system from a more basic level. So I think perfect example of that is, you and I talked about this before the podcast, but I have a patient who's a long COVIDer, and as we know, with long COVID, the immune system is very dysregulated. There is a lot of things wrong with the immune system that are ongoing. Is there still viral activity? There's lots of things, but I deal with a lot of long COVID, and I could tell you most of my patients, we can address it. We can help get rid of the virus. We can get their immune systems healthy again. We can restore their mitochondrial function. And then there's a few that we just can't. So let's take that exactly what you're saying. So let's say this patient has this past bad experience, right? This past trauma, that their cells are their immune system is way overly reactive, right? Now they get an insult like COVID, which was not just an insult on a physical level, but like this guy lost his mother, right, during COVID. I mean, there was a lot of trauma associated with this event. So now his immune system is really kicked into gear. His immune system is a mess, right? And I throw everything I can think of at it, and it's not fixing. It's not getting him better because his immune system is going to stay in this hyper surveillance stage because of what it experienced way back when. It's the only way it knows how to react. So I had this immune system that was doing fine, even though I had all this bad stuff happen when I was young or whatever. But my immune system was fine until I got hit with a big trauma. And
Yeah.
then the immune system couldn't recover, even when I throw everything at it. So perhaps the only way I can get that immune system recover is to go back and try and start from the beginning and retrain the immune system. Would that make sense?
I mean, intuitively, it makes sense. And what we see in our communities over and over again is that to be true.
Right.
Like when you address the root cycle, and ultimately it's bringing the body back into safety, right? Like it's really like
Yeah.
when you're in a fight or flight state, none of the organs are working at optimal level, right? And I think it's really important to expand out what is being in fight or flight even mean,
Yeah.
right? Like that to me is like it's a big thing. Like it's like getting hit, like your patient, like getting hit with that much all at once is a lot on the nervous
Yeah.
system,
Right.
right? And it blows it out. In fact, it blows out everything. And what we find, we've done a lot of work with cancer patients over the years, and what we found is that most cancer patients are just kind of living with these patterns, and then they get the diagnosis, and the trauma of the diagnosis just wakes up. It makes everything louder that they didn't have to deal with in their lives,
Right.
right? So it's like the coping mechanisms have gone away. So the illness, for whatever reason it shows up, it's a chance to actually go back and look at and do true healing. To me, I feel like this aspect of health, addressing the traumas, addressing the repressed emotions, addressing the resentments, addressing everything that's sort of locked and loaded underneath the surface, like actually releasing that from our bodies. It's like releasing toxins from our bodies. It's releasing these oh man, I don't even know what bound energy is the best way I've been able to describe it in many ways. Like it's like tension. It's like tension that's held in the body that is just contributing to an overactive nervous system that
Yeah.
is compromising all.
The immune system, which
Yeah.
is at the root of everything,
Yeah.
is getting our immune systems healthy. One of the problems I think is that, medicine is very much, physicians don't, and we're aware of stress now. We always, are working with that with our patients, but we don't really, want to delve deeper into the brain. That's not our gig. Even people like me who are functional medicine doctors, and we spend 2 hours with our patients, not 15 minutes like the traditional doctor, but that still is a little out of our realm, right? So when I see a patient where I'm like, okay, I'm not getting you better. I don't know why I'm not getting you better. I'm doing everything that makes, most of my patients better. How do I tell them, okay, we need to explore this on a psychological level? And they come back to me with, I could tell you this is not in my head. I've had a lot of psychotherapy. This is not in my head. This is, if you think this is my head, you're wrong. I'll go find another doctor. How do I make them understand this is not at all saying this is in your head? This is
Yeah.
saying this is in your immune system, in your, your brain spinal cord, in your DNA methylation patterns. And we need to figure out where that started and how to undo it. How do I tell them that?
Yeah. One, I don't think psychotherapy is a complete solution to the problem. So, and I think that a lot of people have an aversion to psychotherapy because it's very much rooted in the mind. And I don't actually feel like the mind is creating the problem. I believe that it's actually in the body, right? Like I said, there's an emotional experience. What we like to call them, the scientific term in our model is a condensed emotional experience. And when we have an experience in our life that we didn't have the the safety, and safety is really core. This is all polyvagal now. Like when we have a traumatic experience in our lives, and trauma is like a really like actually like not the right word, because ultimately you could have had a big T trauma, like physical abuse, sexual abuse. Sure, those all are very much impacting here, but even those little T traumas
Yeah.
where your mom may have left the room and you were crying for 15 minutes because she wasn't there and you felt abandoned, and like that has a significant impact on a child. And those condensed emotional experiences are in our bodies. And what we've done, even and for me, like for many years, like I actually didn't remember many of these memories. I didn't have a recollection of them because I was so disconnected, and I was in my head. And so to me, I'm not necessarily saying what I would say is, instead of it even being like go to a psychologist or explore this aspect, it's like let's restore connection with the body by getting in touch with your emotions again. Like to me, it's like we need to get in touch with the emotions because the emotions have data. The emotions have significant, like they like we have to restore the mind body link. And so that's like where I even like that's where we begin most of our clients actually. Most of our clients, when we guide them into these processes, it really is about first restoring the mind body connection. And from there, we can begin to actually look. And ultimately, like our processes, like our emotional lab reports, we're just truly actually identifying what tools are going to work best for your unique psychology.
Hmm.
So it has nothing to even do with anything other than, okay, like if you understand, like, do most of your clients actually accept that stress is a problem?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
nobody denies that, right?
Yeah, right. So nobody denies that stress is a problem, right? Do your clients acknowledge that a dysregulated nervous system is a problem?
Yes.
Okay. So then in that case, the best way I would even describe it is like, hey, like, to me, it's like, let's actually start to understand why your nervous system is
This is
dysregulated,
dysregulated.
because we need to understand why it's dysregulated, what types of experiences you had in your life that cause you to have this level of dysregulation, that cause you to have these patterns.
Got it.
Because from there, now we can design a tailored plan that's going to meet you where you're at so you can have the best results moving forward.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when we talk, I would say, okay, let's say I have a patient who's very healthy. Like, I'll use myself. I feel like, okay, I'm healthy. I'm doing all the right things. But is there actually things I'm not even aware of, right, that are impeding that? Should everybody go through this process? Should it just be that this becomes a part of the normal routine of a longevity focused practice? That, I'm pretty big in the longevity doctor world. I have a whole lot of colleagues. I know of very few who include any kind of this sort of, this system into their practice in all their lab testing and all the things that they do. And I'm online talking to these physicians that, over 100 of them internationally, and people aren't doing this. Should it really be incorporated just like our CBC and our CMP, that you do this piece? And is there a simple way of doing that where it just becomes an integrated part of, this is a screening tool we do on everybody, because your longevity is dependent on us making sure that your nervous system's in a very healthy state?
Oh, man. I mean, there's layers to this conversation, right? Like I do believe that prioritizing nervous system health will, in 10 years, people will look back and say it's one of the most important aspects of longevity. Like I do believe that.
Well,
Like we
that's our
don't.
goal, is we're supposed to be 10 years ahead of the rest of the world. So,
Well, so then yes, I mean I imagine. I mean that's why we're having this conversation,
right.
right? Like you're leading this conversation because you're recognizing it, you're doing the research, you're understanding the depths of what this might be, and I don't think science has caught up. I don't think that medical institutions have really caught up to the importance of this, and I think it's because at a macro level we haven't had a great way to measure this, right? Like, and we don't have a great way to measure the impact of trauma. We don't have a great way to really measure and really even quantify nervous system health, right? Like we have heart rate variability and we've got things that we're tracking now, but
Yeah.
those are still
Right.
snapshots in time,
Yeah.
right? Like we haven't been able to correlate that data with the deeper data of like, all right, what happened to this individual in their life that's contributing to this stress in the first place? Like we don't have a
Yeah.
sophisticated data model, right? And so that's what's caused, and I think now like that's a lot of the work that we do at Liber8, which is really like, like our data models are able to track and correlate different traumas and different conditions to different health symptoms. Like we can now map that stuff. So like that's a lot of our research and the stuff that we do. But I do believe that for me, nervous system health, when it's the base foundational layer. What was the question again? I think I don't want to make sure
It's
I answered the question.
whether everybody, like,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
should everybody just standardly in our testing, just like we do every other lab test, we all do these screening health tests. That's what we follow, is getting objective data as to, are our patients, healthy, or are they going to live forever?
so
Should
okay,
this
maybe
be just a
let's
part of every screening?
well let's maybe define what health is. Let's actually get up like a second and just be like, what does it mean to be a healthy human? Right? Like, is it just being alive till you're 120, or is it thriving until you're
Right, right.
120?
And our goal is health span, right? Not lifespan.
Right.
We want to be vibrant and energetic and playing with people and climbing mountains and doing all the things we want to do at 120. We don't want to be in a wheelchair at 20. That's all of our goals. And am I impeding that goal by not addressing these nervous system ingrained into my central nervous system from the time I was born, these patterns that have ingrained into my central nervous system that are potentially going to keep me from reaching that goal?
So I'm very careful to impose my beliefs about what it means to live a fulfilling life on anybody, right? Like because it's not everybody has their own value set, right? Like it's like you
Sure.
value things that are different than me. Like myself, I value a life of excellence in every department, which means my relationships. I want to have the most fulfilling intimate relationships. I want to have the most fulfilling family relationships. I want to have the most fulfilling friendships and community. And I want to feel like I belong. I want to have nourishing health and like my body being able to do hard things. I want to have infinite energy. I want my brain to be sharp as I age. Like there's like, so like when I expect, I want to have meaningful work. I want to feel
Right.
like my work matters in the world. I want to feel like I'm contributing to something greater than me. I want to feel like when I leave this planet that I left it better than I found it. Like, so like to me, like when I expand out like what it means to live a fulfilling life beyond just what it means to have great health, I do believe that this working on this aspect is absolutely paramount because ultimately, like our patterns, like we're the common denominator in all these aspects of our lives, right? So like if we're burning out at work, it's likely because we're out of alignment with something in our core. There's some type of a pattern that worked to get us to this point of success, but it's not helping us get to the next pillar, right? And I meet so
Right.
many founders, including myself. I had an exit back in 2019 and left. And then I'm like, what do I do? I was drinking more than I'd ever been drinking. I was in a 9-year relationship that I wasn't connected to. I was so far off my base and I had to get cracked. Oh, I had to learn the hard way of getting out of a relationship and losing everything I thought was important to me in order for me to get this lesson that, wow, yeah, I need to actually get to the root of all the things that are pulling me away from living my life in alignment. And when I did that, when I became happier, I naturally stopped drinking. When I became happier, I naturally began to heal my gut. Like, and this is the piece that I feel like is so important to name. Like, I feel like happier people are healthier people.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anyone would deny that. Right.
And so
Yeah, and
when,
I think your definition of vitality and, and having a good long life is probably pretty equal to most of us. I mean, some people maybe
yeah,
value their physical well-being more than their contributing to the world well-being, but for the most part, all of us want those same things. We want to feel valued. We want to feel like we're of value to people and people are of value to us. We want all those things. And I agree with you. I think that that's where longevity medicine maybe not on par. for as progressive as we are. And we always, we always say, our motto at Boulder Longevity Institute is tomorrow's medicine today. We always say we are 15 years above the curve. We are doing things, like GLP-1 agonists, we were using 5-6 years ago, not for weight loss, but for brain function, a lot of other things. We're always doing things way ahead of everybody else. And yet I feel like this is a place where every longevity practice is not looking. We're not focusing on this more integral, nervous system well-being. So does everybody, is there a simple, because, I've been through Liber8. It's not easy, right? It's not a simple process to go through, right? Can I get everybody to do that? I don't know. Is that going to be, or can you guys simplify that down to make it where I can have this nice little screening tool for people where they can now at least get an awareness that, well, my nervous system isn't quite intact?
Yeah, well, we're working on an assessment that people can take, a quiz to really get to the root of like where you are in your nervous system health journey and what types of tools might be best for you, right? Like, I think like if you're completely disconnected and you have not entered into the world of nervous system health, we're probably not for you right now, right? There's a lot of base hits that you can do, right? Like it's like you can get into a deeper like we have a free app. People can use our app and they can begin to log their triggers and just pay attention to their triggers, right? Like it's like becoming more aware, like listening to podcasts like these, like reading books on mind body wellness. Like, there's a lot of places to start, right? And there's a lot of base hits that we can do, like just coming back into great relationship with our emotions through some type of a mind body tool like breath work, right? Like there's so many free apps out there. Othership is one of my favorite breathwork apps. I use it. It's fantastic. There's great, so there's tools out. I just want to name them like to get
Yeah,
started.
but as you're saying, those are treating a symptom. All of those are still treating a symptom, not
Well,
a
okay.
root
So,
cause.
well, so let me name this, right? Our process, like the process that we've developed is a 90-minute process, right? To get to the root of whatever's happening at the surface today. It would take somebody close to probably 10 therapy sessions to access the depth that we can help you access in 90 minutes.
90 minutes. So it's
So,
pretty basic.
so the thing is, like, there's no way to get the answer immediately.
Right.
And like, we've done a lot of research. We've been doing research for 5 years. We were advised by some of the smartest people in the world to build our technology systems and our tracking systems. Like, this is, there's a reason why this hasn't existed at scale yet, because it's such a complicated problem.
Got
But
it.
we've done our best to simplify this and create them, in our eyes, the most efficient pathway to finding and beginning to resolve the root emotions, the repressed memories, the unconscious belief systems that are contributing to poor health. And that to us is like, so yes, is 90 minutes a simple process? Is it easy to go into your stuff if it's stuff that you've been resisting looking at? No, it's not easy, which is why it's like I'm not also here to force this on anybody, right? Like if you're listening to this and you're navigating a health challenge, I think the first place I would start is just looking at this from a like, what is your why for health, right? Like really coming back to that. Like what is it like to me? I don't do my emotional work. I used to do it because I was unhealthy, because I was on a healing journey. And then eventually it kind of shifted towards like, all right, I don't really need to heal anything. Like I'm actually just on a path to thrive. And on that path of
To be
thriving,
more excellent.
to be more excellent.
Yeah.
And for me, like this became a journey of looking for my blind spots.
Hmm.
Where am I falling short? Why have I not been able to achieve this goal yet? Why is my relationship, why do I keep attracting the same types of partners over and over and over again? Like I expanded my viewpoint, and then it became preventative, right? Because I then started doing the deeper healing work because I wanted to prevent shitty breakups from happening. I wanted to prevent nervous system outbreaks every time I got hit with a big challenge at work. I wanted to prevent all of these things from happening. And so it did become more preventative for me, but it didn't start that way. Like came into this work because I was like in crisis.
Yeah.
So I hope people don't have to get there. I wish people didn't have to get into crisis mode to begin looking at this. Like, I wish you didn't have to get long COVID, or I wish you didn't have to have a cancer diagnosis, or I wish you didn't have to be in a terrible autoimmune response. Like, I wish we didn't let ourselves get to those breaking points. But unfortunately, that's the nature of our reality right now. And I hope this podcast, I hope this recording inspires whoever's watching or listening to lean in before they get to a crappy crisis. But we can't control that either, right? Maybe that's the
I
design
guess,
of life.
I educate a lot of physicians. I work in this world of functional medicine. I guess, my question to you might be, as sort of a leader in this field of longevity medicine, and like I said, I'm on discussions every day with doctors saying, what should we do with this patient? And we have, 10 of us throwing in our inputs. Should we now be starting to teach this to our other longevity physicians a little bit more than what I ever see? I mean, you're not at a lot of the conferences I'm at, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting more so, but should we, like, again, start encouraging that, hey guys, maybe this should be as much a part of your screening test as doing your whole cardiovascular panel. Maybe this should be incorporated into our practice if we want to be the best and we want people to have the most amazing lives ever, which is really our goal in longevity medicine. This should probably be sort of top of our radar. And maybe we're not going to get everybody to do it, but should it be recommended to everybody as this is
Well,
something we recommend people do?
um, if your communities need research and science to support this, we have a 115-page white paper on every single piece of science that exists on the internet that links emotion to some type of illness.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about threat detection networks. And our medical advisor, Dr. Olivia Leslar, is a leading researcher, really, in psychoimmunology, and she does speak about this at different
Yeah.
conferences. Like, I do believe that this message will become mainstream in 10 years, and I think you're early.
Right.
And I do believe that it takes a concerted effort from the entire community to change a culture of healing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not just on the physicians to change the culture of healing. It's also on the patients to take more ownership of their healing. It's a concerted effort for all of us to really, like, come together and say, hey, look, like, there's something big that we're not addressing here. And how can we just empower the truly, like, at the end of the day, like, because the patient will do whatever the physician asks them to do, and the patient has to be
Sometimes.
the one to pick up to do the work.
Right.
Right. So, like, you could learn all this stuff, have all the science, and speak to your patients, and your patients might just be like, no.
Of course, but they can do that
Right.
with anything. Right.
They can do that with anything. So it's a bit of both in that, I think this conversation needs to be had at all the longevity conferences.
Right. And that's what, and I'll start throwing it in. I mean, I start when we're talking, when our, we have this WhatsApp chat group, and I will start saying when people aren't getting better, maybe we need to look deeper, because I think, what's being overlooked is that whole piece of the immune system is not healing for some reason, because we are pretty smart at getting the immune system better. But if there's something that is stopping that, we are not addressing that. And this may be that missing piece to all those patients that we have that you hear it all the time. I did this and this and this and this and this, and then another doctor throws in, well, did you try this? And they try that. But nobody ever throws in, let's look back at the neuroscience piece, the psychoneurobiology piece, and work on that piece, and then see if we can fix the immune system after we fix that. So I think, we can kind of sort of close on this with just sort of saying that in my mind, what you brought me in awareness to, and what I hope the listeners to this bring awareness to, is that this is not that there's, some, that all the psychotherapy in the world, we're working on your mind and your emotions. We need to work at a deeper level on the ingrained, at a cellular level, the ingrained change in your immune system that was based in patterns that have now set they're set in stone, right? There are these patterns that are set there. And if we can change the patterns, we can change the immune system.
You are, I mean, yeah, you're nailing it. And this
So
is, and
perfect.
this, and this is where, this is what Liber8 helps people do.
Right.
Right. Like we have a diagnostic called an emotional lab report where we actually take you through a process of uncovering the specific emotional patterns and where they came from and how they were formed. And we teach you and we educate you and we empower you. And then we create a personalized plan for you to get rid of those patterns for good. And we work alongside amazing doctors like you, Dr.
Yeah.
Yurth, to track the impact of that on physiological outcomes.
Great. Perfect. Well, thanks for talking with me about this. Let's bounce this back and forth. I think it's given me a little bit, of a better direction for helping my clients and hopefully for other doctors listening to this to kind of address and hopefully we'll start again thinking more about this neuroimmunobiology piece more than we are just thinking about the immune system as its own entity. So I appreciate, I appreciate your education to me, and I appreciate meeting you, and I will certainly start pushing this a little bit more, even in my very healthy people who want to live forever. I think, hopefully this podcast will help us to do that, but I think this is something, for all you guys listening, hey, it's a little bit like, why not try it and see if there's stubborn things that aren't getting better, or if there's, you're just somebody who wants to live their best, most excellent life. This is a piece that you can't really neglect.
I mean, I'll just end with this too. Like, imagine a world where you're not getting triggered anymore.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. Like, I mean, like truly, like when I started down this path 5 years ago, I could not be in a room without having social anxiety. I couldn't enter on a stage without having a nervous breakdown. I couldn't have, like, I was in these states of fear. And the more I've learned to clear my body, clear my nervous system of all the things that have been holding me back, I don't get triggered anymore. I don't have those patterns anymore. I am free of them.
Yeah.
And I'm one person. We have thousands of human beings that I've seen across the world, whether they're inside of the Liber8 programs or just outside doing this work.
Yeah.
It's like it's far beyond health. It's like it's freedom.
Yeah.
It's true freedom. So, anyways, I appreciate you, Dr. Yurth. Thank you again for being a believer and an advocate for this work. And
thank you for teaching me.
no, thank you for again being like what makes and I just want to name like physicians like yourself that are curious, that are learning, that want to be the best, that you're 10 years ahead. Like this couldn't happen without individuals like you. So I really have to thank you for just being the pioneering force and energy that you are for longevity and wanting to do what's best for your clients. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here to share this great work with your crew.
Well, much gratitude, Raj.
Yeah.